Good morning. Jeff Dawson, Dallas, Texas. I came across a couple of articles, and I'm going to do two videos. The first one was entitled, "It's Okay to Be Quiet in Meetings." And a lot of people chimed in on it about being introverts and introspective and don't speak up. And that is a good thing, because you don't learn if you're constantly running your mouth. Many of my bosses in the company that I've worked with, that was a technique that I learned. I can't learn anything if I'm always talking. However, there is a time and a place where you can't just sit there and say nothing. You have to be prepared. And I cover this in my book, Do Your Damn Job. When you walk into a meeting, know what the topic is. Because if it comes down to your department or you as an employee are going to have to be held accountable for something that happened during a project, you better be ready to defend your actions succinctly and to the point. You can't wander around and say, well, maybe this or maybe that, or try and put it off on a coworker. I have seen this time and time again. So when you're quiet, yes, you're learning, you're absorbing, but you have to be prepared. A lot of people said, well, if you're going to respond, it's got to be in very simple sentences and very short and to the point. Well, that doesn't always work. I know in the meetings I've sat in, especially one where we had hit a fiber line, a big meeting was called, all the powers to be were there. I was asked to come, even though it wasn't my department, but that didn't matter. My boss asked me to attend. We sat there for an hour and 10 minutes. You know what was accomplished? Nothing. And I sat there and listened. I listened to all the plans and all the meetings and all the reports that were going to be generated and the open lines of communication. I'm so sick of hearing about that. That's another topic I'll discuss later. An hour and 10 minutes, it was resolved, nothing. And then it came my turn. I wasn't going to speak up until my boss said, well, what do you have to add into it? I was prepared. I had my notes. I had the prior meetings on discussing this very issue, and I handled it in about 3 minutes. It took 3 minutes to revisit who was going to locate utilities on this project. It was that simple. Everyone who had ignored it. They didn't ignore it when the fiber line got hit and it knocked out one of the buildings. Now we have everyone's attention. So I was quiet through the meeting until it became my turn to talk. And then I took the floor. I had both barrels loaded. And I fired off. And I basically told my boss, indirectly addressing the general contractor, that we shouldn't move another yard of dirt until every line on this project has been properly marked and identified. Then we can go back to work. And all the general contractor could say was, well, we'll take it under advisement. And I said, fine, you can take it under advisement, but boss, not until it's done. We don't need to move another yard of dirt out here. Now, for some, in another article about compassion with honesty, I was honest. If people would have been in that meeting, they said, well, you weren't very compassionate about it. Well, probably not. I was stating the facts. And the facts are, in my line of work, which doesn't apply to everyone, but They're underground power lines and gas lines and fiber lines. If you've ever seen a gas line hit on a construction project, it isn't pretty. Or a fuel line that happened like 30 years ago up in Addison when they were widening the DNT, or the Dallas North Toll Road, and it caught fire. Or when a piece of equipment strikes an electrical line and electrifies everyone within a 50-foot radius because the ground becomes electrified. It's just not the piece of equipment. I've seen these things. I don't want to see those things again. I don't want anybody to go through those. I don't want to see a crane operator with the boots blown out because somehow he got too close to a high power line and it arced. Yes, electricity will jump. And when it does, this operator never knew it. All the tires on his crane were blown out. The soles of his feet were blown out. He was in shock. These are the things that have to be addressed. And when you're in a meeting, yes, you have to listen. But when your turn comes up, if you are worried about hurting someone's feelings, then the wrong people are in that room. In fact, one responder was like, well, we'll bring them in if we think they have something to contribute to the next meeting after we've sent them notes and they have had a chance to dissect them. No. If you were, and I hate the term, but everybody uses it, if you're on that team and that meeting revolves around that team, then you need your key players in that meeting and they need to find out what they did wrong. Now, if you're not in construction, but I had a plan. We executed it, but we got in too big of a hurry. We were just about to top out this form, which took 9 yards of concrete, and the whole thing, the bottom of the forms blew out. Whose fault was that? Well, it was mine. I was the foreman. Was I fluent in doing these forms? I was learning. This was the first time I had dealt with what they called Simon's forms. I called my boss. I told him what was going on. He came out there. We tried to salvage it. There was nothing to salvage. And instead of coming after me, he went after my lead man. And I said, no, it's not his fault. I approve this. I didn't make that mistake again. And he told me honestly, you screwed up. Yeah, I did. I had to admit it. And this is the other part about this compassion with honesty. If that employee isn't willing to admit they made a mistake, where does that put you? You're responsible for that employee. You've tried to correct their mistake and they won't admit they made a mistake. Well, compassion is now over. Either get with the program or find a different job, because I cannot have you working here and making the same mistake over and over and over again. And that to me is what a good manager does. And a good employee will respect the manager for correcting them. I have been in many situations where employees didn't get along, and I had to make the call. But I would get them together and say, let's flesh it out. What's going on here? I really need both of you guys on this job, but you know something? If I have to make a choice, I'll make that hard choice. And someone's going to go, because this is disrupting the whole project. And I cannot have that. So let's flesh it out. And now you combine these two techniques of listening and showing some compassion with honesty. I took both sides' grievances, I disseminated them, and then I made the call. And either this is my call, we move forward, or somebody moves on. What's it going to be? 9 times out of 10, everybody stayed together. We worked out the differences and we moved forward. This is what needs to happen. These are the techniques that work. They were very successful for me through the years. I've seen them work in other companies. Yes, you want to be honest. You want to show some compassion. You want to listen. But when it's not working, then it's time to say, okay, you're not listening. Now I'm going to get your attention. And that's all I have on that topic. But like I said, I cover these techniques in my book, Do Your Damn Job. And I titled it because it gets your attention. Some people puts off. Well, that's too harsh. Well, read the book. Because what it comes down to is doing your job. But if I titled it, Do Your Job, well, that doesn't really grab your attention, does it? If I say, do your damn job, I'm talking directly to you, of which you can then talk directly to your bosses and your employees and get the desired results that you are seeking out.